This is Shannon with the Atelier Art Studio, and this is part 2 of our chapter online. Join me as we continue working through Juliette Aristides' Beginning Drawing Atelier, an instructional sketchbook. Within this section, we will practice drawing various different lines and learn how they are effectively used throughout different compositions. Let's get started! In this section, we will practice drawing lines in various different directions. This is a deceptively simple exercise, much like the handwriting one in the previous video, and it took me multiple tries to get a result that I felt even somewhat satisfied with. Don't be afraid to take your time and erase what you don't like. As Aristides mentions in the book, it is harder than it looks, and don't judge your efforts too harshly. The goal here is to create confident, assertive lines. Start with your pencil at one dot and draw down to its partner dot. Move with intention and with the clear vision of where you want the line to end. We are reminded that multiple thin lines, placed lightly, are better than a thick, anxiously drawn line. As we reach the end of this exercise, you can definitely tell that I struggled, and I definitely missed my ruler, but I just want to mention also that we are human beings, and we will never make perfectly straight lines. However, this is to build hand-eye coordination, as well as confidence and accuracy, and hopefully you felt that way by the end of this. In the following exercises, we will continue practicing drawing various lines. Afterwards, we will analyze different master drawings and see how line is used within each one, starting with verticals. In this drawing by John Ruskin, we are asked to find as many vertical and horizontal lines as we can. Additionally, we are asked to look for semicircles. Let's see how many we can find within this drawing. Notice how in this drawing, the directional lines almost make up a grid-like pattern. These lines also help us to travel through space and give perspective. The strong verticals and horizontals reinforce the architectural nature and feeling of the subject. In this section, we will practice drawing diagonals. Diagonals convey motion and instability and act like a tightly wound rubber band, giving us the feeling of tension. On page 25, we are given this dynamic drawing of horses. Find as many repeating diagonals as you can throughout this drawing. Here are all of the directional lines I was able to find throughout this drawing. Notice how the lines almost have a domino effect, bringing us through the drawing but not off the page. On page 26, we begin drawing curves. These C-curves are one of my favorite lines to draw, and are especially helpful when doing gestures or approaching the figure. After practicing drawing curved lines on the previous page, we are asked to find and sketch the C-curves within this drawing by Kenyon Cox. Notice how the C-curves act as a unifying element to this piece. In this image, you can see all of the major C-curves I was able to find throughout this drawing. On page 28, we are asked to sketch as many repeating diagonal, vertical, and horizontal lines within this drawing by Adolf von Menzel. Draw with me as we search for these directional lines. So I realized there are some curved lines here, and I just put them in to remind myself of how they function within the composition. Here's the original image with the verticals, horizontals, and diagonals overlaid. It is interesting how the directional lines are used to point towards the center of the composition. Just as our eye starts to trail off the image, there is a directional line pulling us back towards the center, where the artist wants us to look. In this study by Leonardo da Vinci maps out the features of the face and their relationship to one another. We are asked to recreate the lines seen on the original drawing in our own version on page 31. Start by placing horizontal lines across the brow ridge, underneath the nose, and underneath the mouth. Then, find the center line of the face and run a vertical line. Drop additional verticals at major landmarks such as the corner of the eyes, side of the nose, and the inside and outside of the pupil. Notice here how the inside corners of the eyes align with the sides of the nose. And here, notice how the outside edge of the pupil aligns with the outskirts of the muzzle area of the mouth. At this point, I start to run diagonals from the top of the ear through the bottom of the ball of the nose to the corners of the mouth. I also run a diagonal through the outer edge of the pupil to the corners of the mouth. I run the last few diagonals through the major cross sections of the face where many of my horizontal and vertical lines intersect, then through the cheekbone to the philtrum or cupid's bow area. This is as close as I was able to get to the original. I transposed these lines in color so that you could see them better, although I admit it looks a little scary and maybe even less clear. I found this exercise to be really interesting in finding harmony and patterns throughout something as complex as the face. Something interesting that Aristides mentions on page 30 is that the fewer the angles used, the more unified and compelling the portrait. Something to keep in mind the next time you go to the easel. That concludes our chapter online. Thank you for watching, and please tune in to the next video where we tackle shape. To show your support for the Atelier Art Studio, please like and subscribe to our channel.